بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا وعظيمنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمد المصطفى المرتضى المجتبى وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تلا. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم اهدنا وسددنا وتب علينا واجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك الكريم. Lillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. Have the good intentions. I remind myself and I remind you. The Wahhabis reject logic. So let us address the intellectual and logical issues pertaining to this blasphemy. The blasphemy, the kufr of likening Allah to the creations. They do not agree that the mind should have consideration in deciphering what Allah revealed, in explaining and putting the ayahs together and explaining them with proper, rational explanation. So they say sound thinking is good, but it has its place. If they completely reject sound thinking, no one will listen to them. So by their mere tongues and not their hearts, they give some weight to it. But if they encourage people to think, they will expose themselves. So they deny that rational thinking is part of the creed, al-aqidah, which is a lie. They teach people to just believe in the texts by their literal and apparent meanings, and not to listen to anyone who says otherwise. They might actually put their fingers in their ears, and I've seen that personally, following the sunnah of the blasphemers from the time of Prophet Noah alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah told us in the Quran about their rejection of the truth, that Prophet Nuh said, وَإِنِّي كُلَّمَا دَعَوْتُهُمْ لِتَغْفِرَ لَهُمْ جَعَلُوا أَصَابِعَهُمْ فِي آذَانِهِمْ. Noah said, and surely whenever I call them so that you would forgive them by guiding them to Islam, they put their fingers in their ears. They refer to a saying of Imam Ali, may Allah accept his deeds, radiyallahu anhu. But they pervert its text and distort its true meaning. They say that Ali said, if the religion were by logic, we would wipe the bottom of the khuf instead of the top. They would then tell the person to forget about logic and just accept the literal interpretations. It is important to have the correct understanding of this saying of Imam Ali. Ali, radiyallahu anhu, actually said, لو كان الدين بالرأي لكان أسفل الخف أولى بالمسح من أعلاه وقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح على ظاهر خفيه. Had the religion been by opinion, wiping on the khuf, wiping on the bottom of the footgear instead of the top would have been better, because the bottom is the side that gets dirty. However, I saw the Messenger of Allah wiping the top. Do not be surprised at this misquote of theirs. They are dishonest, and they do it all the time. Imam Ali did not negate the use of logic. Logic, reasoning, those are synonyms, and the use of the intellect are praised throughout the Quran. The two sayings of Allah are repeated many times in the Quran. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you not use your minds? Yani, don't you have minds? It means don't you use your minds? And أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ, do they not use their minds? He also said, Azza wa Jal, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك. It means certainly in the creation of the heavens and earth and the alternation of the day and the night, there are surely signs for those who have sound minds. Those who mention Allah while standing, sitting, or they remember Allah, while standing, sitting, or on their sides, and they think about the creation of the heavens and earth. That's clear. For us, that's clear. Imam Ali, the most knowledgeable of the companions, may Allah be pleased with all of them, would not say something against the Quran. Of course, he's not impeccable. And if so, had he done that, then his saying would be rejected for the revelation of Allah. If he did, his saying would be rejected. Had he said something against the Quran, it would be rejected. Al-haqqu ahaqqu an yuttaba'. The truth is the most deserving to be followed. In fact, consideration of the mental judgments is an integral part of understanding the belief and has its origin in the Quran and the Sunnah. Hence, it is neither philosophy nor innovation. Philosophy is not our creed. The aqidah of ahlus-sunnah, the Ash'ari creed, and the Maturidi creed, which is the same creed, is not philosophy. And our way of talking about the belief is not philosophy. Philosophy is a way of thinking. Philosophy is not logic. Logic and philosophy are not synonyms. Philosophy is a corrupted way of thinking. Aqdun fasid. Philosophy is a corrupted reasoning. Falsafa. The basis of philosophy is to deem the intellect the ultimate authority. From here, the philosophers have gone into different madhabs, all following their whims. Their madhabs, the madhabs of the philosophers. The most famous of them are those Greek philosophers, but there are others. Also, philosophers from different cultures. Indian philosophers, for example. Chinese philosophers. They've gone into different madhabs, like the madhab of those who say that the world is not real, and the madhab of those who say that the eternal creator has a creation that is eternal with him, which is ludicrous. It's hard to believe an adult would come to that conclusion. And like the madhab of those who say that in the upper world there are eternal reflections of the things that exist, the temporal things that exist on the earth. And the madhab of those who say the world, its origin is eternal particles, eternal atoms, atoms that can't be split, but they are eternal. And others, like those who say that the universe is eternal by its kind, but not by its pieces. And the philosophers delve into such topics as good and evil, politics, government. These Greek philosophers are the imams of Western education. Greek philosophers are the imams of Western education. Our religion is not philosophy. The Muslim scholars have refuted the philosophers. The scholars of Aqidah, like Al-Ash'ari, also pointed out the fact that the prophets, the greatest of Allah's creation, alayhimus salatu wassalam, used logical arguments to refute the blasphemers they encountered and to establish the correct belief in Allah, such as what was narrated in the stories of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, stories with an S, not merely this ayah that's here, but there's no need to go into multiple examples. There's enough to cover. Among those stories was Ibrahim's debate with the tyrant Nimrod, mentioned in the chapter Al-Baqarah, ayah 258. إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهت الذي كفر. When Ibrahim said to that tyrant, "My Lord creates life and makes the living die," Nimrod said, "I create life and I make the living die." Ibrahim said, that is, when Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam saw that this man doesn't understand, he moved to something which he could not claim, which that tyrant could not claim. Because when Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam said, Allah creates life and makes the living die, that tyrant, he killed a person and set a person free. And he said, I create life and make the living die. So Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam said, surely Allah brings the sun from the east, so bring it from the west. Upon that, the one who blasphemed was dumbfounded. By this simple and clever logic, Ibrahim silenced Nimrod alayhi salatu wassalam, who claimed to be God. This verse is evidence for the permissibility of debating deviant people to establish the truth. So if a Wahhabi claims that debating is forbidden, which he will not do until he finds that you have knowledge and he cannot debate with you, otherwise, if he were able to, he would bombard you. Or if he claims that mental evidence is not from the religion, use this verse as your evidence. In fact, it is obligatory on some Muslims, that is, it's a communal obligation, in every town to know the mental and textual evidence and to refute the deviant people. Thus, Imam Ali's aforementioned saying refers to the details of the practical rules, al-fiqh, not the essentials of belief. One can realize the correct belief about the Creator through reasoning, that worshiping a man or a stone or a picture is invalid. Why else do the Christians readily say, just believe? It is because they realize the confusion of their beliefs. However, we do not use logic to deduce the practical rules. For example, how would one logically conclude that there are 5 prayers? Mere logic does not necessitate 5 prayers over 6 or 4. How would one logically deduce that the bowing position comes before the prostration when praying? These judgments cannot be known by logic and are not based merely on opinion. These judgments are taken from the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Prophets are sent as a mercy to humans and jinn who otherwise cannot know how to worship their Lord properly. That is, the prophets come with what the mind is neutral about. The prophets come with what the mind does not necessarily confirm nor necessarily deny. And the prophets don't come with anything that conflicts with what the mind necessarily confirms or necessarily denies. Everything that the prophets came with is in compliance with the mind. It is in compliance with what the mind deems necessary, with what the mind deems possible, and with what the mind deems impossible. As for the things that the mind deems possible, that means the mind deems that they could be or they might not be. And prophets have come clarifying what is neutral in the mind. That is, the prophets have confirmed that paradise exists, while mentally it's possible that they don't exist. The prophets have confirmed hellfire and angels. And the prophets have shown the way to success in the hereafter and success in the present life. However, those humans and jinn can use their minds to know what is and what is not befitting to say about their Lord. For that reason, some scholars even said that whoever is sane and pubescent is accountable to confirm the existence of the Creator and to believe in His oneness correctly. Some of them said that a sane pubescent person, without hearing the message of a messenger, must believe in the oneness of God, or else he will be in hell forever. That's not the saying of the majority, though. The majority said he has to hear the message of a prophet, and that if he didn't hear the message of a prophet, then he wouldn't be accountable in the hereafter, even if he worshipped a stone. But because the mind can realize the right belief, some of them said that whoever's sane and pubescent must believe in the oneness of God. That includes believing that God is not like anything. That's part of believing the oneness. That he has no similar. No one has attributes like his. No one has a self like his. No one can do what he does. He's one. And that he alone is the creator of everything, the one who does not resemble anything, even if that person never heard the message of a prophet. This is because every child is born with the readiness for the correct belief. That's why they said so. They said because every child is born on the fitrah. It's the ability to realize the proper belief is embedded in our natures. The ability to realize the right belief of the Creator is embedded in our natures. Every child is born with the readiness for the correct belief, the fitrah, and the person is mentally able to reach that correct belief, that same pubescent person. Allah said, وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. They will say, had we listened and had we used our minds, we would not have been inhabitants of hell. This verse proves that the mental judgment has weight and should be considered. Any question? The prophets came with, confirmed what the mind is neutral about. Yes. Yeah, I said, for example, in the mind, the existence of paradise and hell could be paradise, might not be paradise. An atheist will tell you, who said there's paradise? So the mind itself is neutral about that. The mind says there could be or it might not be. Just the mind alone. So the prophets came and they confirmed. They said there is hell. There is paradise. There are angels. There are jinn. An atheist will tell you, you believe in the jinn. You believe in ghosts. What if one doesn't know if there is another in his town that knows the textual and mental proofs? Then let him learn the textual and mental proofs so that he can feel safe that the communal obligation is fulfilled. He says, so before the prophets came and confirmed these matters, the people didn't believe in them? Well, how do people know about them? What makes a person know that there's paradise or hell? You said, like, if the concept of a hereafter doesn't exist. Wait, what makes people know if there's a paradise or a hell? Answer this question for me. Okay, so if they're guessing or assuming, then it's not confirmed. The prophets came and they confirmed that. They said there's paradise, there's hell, there are angels, there are jinn, there's enjoyment of the grave, torture of the grave. There's halal and there's haram, and there's wajibat. Question, is that for the 13 attributes and for the prophets only? La. There needs to be someone in every area where there's Muslims who can refute deviant people. Not just the 13 attributes. Who can refute people? Do y'all want to continue or? Ijmalan, in general, he can refute people. He can refute deviant people. There has to be someone in every area where there's Muslims. There's all kinds of people come up with all kinds of stuff. All kinds of ideas, weird ideas. And he can defend the right belief. Not just he can refute people, he can defend the correct belief. طيب. The clarification of what the scholars meant when they dispraised rational argumentation. Kalam. But rational is in parentheses here. The clarification of what the scholars meant when they dispraised argumentation. Kalam. And the word rational is in parentheses. Rational argumentation, that is, among the scholars are those who dispraise something called kalam. And we're going to talk about now, what is that kalam? And why did they dispraise the kalam? Is the kalam the rational argumentation? Why is this rational in parentheses? It will become clear, insha'Allah ta'ala. Many Wahhabis will attempt to thwart your rational argumentation by telling you that what you are doing is called kalam. And the scholars dispraised kalam. They referred to the book and the sunnah and went no further. And the Prophet ﷺ and the companions never used it. Therefore, accept what came in the book and the sunnah and do not try to rationalize what they did not. That's how they talk, isn't it? Did you understand this, brothers and sisters? What the Wahhabi is saying here? So they will say, what you are doing is called kalam. You're talking about bodies and particles and motion and places and directions and division and beginnings and endings and all of this stuff. That's the philosophy in kalam. That's the kalam. You're a mutakallim. You talk with kalam. The kalam is philosophy. The scholars dispraise the kalam. The scholars refer to the book and the sunnah and they went no further. They didn't talk about the stuff you're talking about. And the Prophet ﷺ and the companions didn't do that. They didn't talk like that. So just accept what came in the book and the sunnah and don't try to rationalize what they didn't. Don't try to make logical sense out of something when the Prophet ﷺ and his companions in the Salaf didn't do that. You understand what he's saying? Wait, do you understand just this, what he's trying, how he's trying to stop you from refuting him? That's what he's doing. Okay. Tayyib, give me a chance, inshallah, I'll explain it. The answer to that, in summary, is that those early scholars did not use the kalam to argue, is that those early scholars who did not use the kalam to argue did not do so because of how few misguided people there were. The answer to that, in summary, is that those early scholars who did not use the kalam to argue did not do so because of how few the misguided people were. It was enough to refer to the book and the sunnah. However, later the misguidance spread. And the people of deviance claimed that the people of truth were using weak narrations. They said, those hadiths, those are weak hadiths. And ambiguous verses with explanations that do not agree with the intellect. They said, your belief doesn't make sense. You claim to be ahlus-sunnah. You bring in these hadiths, these are weak hadiths. And these ayahs you bring, these ayahs are mutashabih. Your explanation is irrational. Your explanation doesn't make any sense. So the scholars refuted them with their own standard. Intellectual argumentation. This is the Kalam of ahlus-sunnah. So originally the Kalam was the talk of the deviant people who come and try to talk their belief and explain their belief with some reasoning. So the old scholars just would refer to hadiths and ayat. Those deviant people were few. They would protect the people, the Muslims, by giving them references from the book and the sunnah. But when the deviant people started spreading and they start talking to people who are weak and who don't have a lot of knowledge, and they claim that the ayahs that the scholars of ahlus-sunnah brought were mutashabih, and that their explanations for the ayahs were irrational, and that the hadiths they were bringing were weak. So then what the scholars are going to do after that? Just put their fingers in their ears? Well, no. So the scholars refuted them with their own standard. Intellectual argumentation. However, the Sunnis' argumentation was derived from the book and the Sunnah, as will be demonstrated. This is the Kalam of ahlus-sunnah. The Kalam of ahlus-sunnah is the rational argumentation as derived from the book and the Sunnah. It's not philosophy. Another principle of philosophy is that revelation is nothing. It's all about the mind. Prophethood and revelation for philosophy and in philosophical terms is nothing. It's out the door. Philosophers wouldn't confirm prophecy. They talk rationally, like these scientists, so-called. Yani, in their claim, they talk rationally. They want to think, they want to use their minds. So they don't want a revelation. The Kalam of ahlus-sunnati wal jama'ah is from the wahi, is derived, extracted from the ayat and the ahadith, as will be demonstrated. Someone once said to Abu Hanifa, why do you talk with the knowledge of Kalam and the companions did not talk with it? He said, their example is like people who do not have in their presence those who fight them. So they did not need to wield their weapons. And our example is like those who have among them those who fight them. So they had to wield their weapons. This means that they had the tools and the means. The Prophet ﷺ and his companions, they had the tools for Kalam and the means. If they needed to, they would have done a better job than we could. They had the same belief system. Those old scholars and the companions and the Prophet ﷺ. But they did not have to use such argumentation often. We don't agree also, by the way, we don't say they never used it. That we don't agree to. If you want to say a general statement that the Sahaba and the Prophet didn't use ilmul kalam, even this general statement is not very tasty. But they didn't use it often. But they had it, and there are examples of that. They did use it occasionally. And the reference for that are not appropriate for this summarized refutation. Meaning, we could go on and on giving examples from the Sahaba, from the Prophet ﷺ, from the Sahaba, from different Sahaba, from At-Tabi'un, from the Mujtahids. Like the story of Al-Awza'i versus Ghaylan. And how Ash-Shafi'i refuted Hafs. If they produce for you a quote from Ash-Shafi'i that he dispraised rational argumentation, such as لَأَنْ يَلْقَ اللَّهَ الْعَبْدُ بِكُلِّ ذَنْبٍ مَا خَلَى الشِّرْكِ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَنْ يَلْقَاهُ بِالْكَلَامِ. For the slave to meet Allah, that means to die and arrive on Judgment Day, with every sin except shirk, is better than to meet him with kalam. We tell them that this is clarified. What Ash-Shafi'i meant by this statement is clarified by other more specific texts. Other texts from Ash-Shafi'i with more specific wording, such as that he said, لَأَنْ يَلْقَ اللَّهَ الْعَبْدُ بِكُلِّ ذَنْبٍ مَا عَدَى الشِّرْكِ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَنْ يَلْقَاهُ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ هَذِهِ الْأَهْوَاءِ. For the slave to meet Allah with every sin except shirk is better than to meet him with any hint of these deviant beliefs. This is why Al-Bayhaqi said in Manaqib Ash-Shafi'i, by this talk, Ash-Shafi'i, may Allah have mercy upon him, only meant Hafs and his likes among the people of heresy, the people of bad beliefs. He didn't mean what ahlus-sunnah does. This is what he meant in all that was conveyed about him, about dispraising the Kalam and its people, except that some narrators generalized and some specified. In the specification of those who specified, there is evidence of his intent. Is that clear? Is it clear? Hafs is a person. Hafs is a deviant man, or a mu'tazili. Actually, Ash-Shafi'i debated on more than one occasion. Ishaq said, my father said to me, one day Ash-Shafi'i was talking to one of the scholars, and he was very tight on him, precise. He sought evidence from him and put him in a corner. I said to him, to Ash-Shafi'i, oh Abu Abdullah, oh Shafi'i, this is for the people of Kalam, not for the people of Halal and Haram. Ash-Shafi'i said, أحكمنا ذاك قبل هذا. We have mastered this before we mastered that. We mastered the Kalam before we mastered the fiqh. We mastered the Kalam before we mastered the halal and the haram. He means himself. He's saying, I mastered Kalam before I mastered halal and haram. Al-Muzani said, a debate took place between a man and me. He asked me about something as if it were about to make me doubt about my religion. I went to Ash-Shafi'i and I said to him, this is what happened. Ash-Shafi'i said to me, where are you? I said, I'm in the masjid. He said to me, you are in the likes of the Sea of Tehran, while its waves are smacking you around. Yani, you got yourself into a situation you couldn't handle. This is a question of the atheists, and the answer for it is this and that. Yani, Ash-Shafi'i responded. He told him, the answer is this, like this. This is how you respond. For the slave to be inflicted with every harm that Allah created is better for him than to be inflicted with arguing for deviant beliefs. Al-Muzani said, a debate took place between a man and me. He asked me about something as if it were about to make me doubt about my religion. I went to Ash-Shafi'i and I said to him, this is what happened. Ash-Shafi'i said to me, where are you? I said, I'm in the masjid. He said to me, you are in the likes of the Sea of Tehran, while its waves are smacking you around. This is a question of the atheists, and the answer for it is this and that. For the slave to be inflicted with every harm that Allah created is better for him than to be inflicted with arguing for deviant beliefs. That's beautiful, mashallah. This proves that he was skilled at intellectual argumentation. And as usual, the Wahhabis say one thing and do another because they use the Kalam that Ash-Shafi'i dispraised, the argumentation of the deviant people. They do have Kalam. Let's take a look at some of the Kalam of the Wahhabis and the people like them who came before them. Here are some of their so-called rational arguments and the refutations for them. 1. They say that denying that Allah is in a place is denying his existence, just as saying that a person is neither in the mosque somewhere nor outside of the mosque somewhere is denying his existence. Did you see that, brothers and sisters? Did you understand that? They say that denying that Allah is in a place is denying his existence, just as saying that a person is neither in the mosque somewhere nor outside of the mosque somewhere is denying his existence. This is Kalam. This is 100% Kalam, the Kalam of the deviant people. We say this is true when the one you are talking about is a body with dimensions, something that must fill a space. And look at how you have compared Allah to a person in the mosque or outside of it, after claiming that you believe that Allah does not resemble anything. As for the one who is not a body, then it is not impossible that he would exist without a place. And Allah existed before places existed, as the Prophet ﷺ said, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٌ غَيْرُهُ. Allah existed eternally and there was nothing other than him. Is that clear, brothers and sisters? Here's another one. They say that Allah is either inside of the creation or outside of it, and he is not inside of it, so he must be outside of it. And if he is outside of it, he is either connected to it or disconnected from it. They say that he is not connected to it, so he must be disconnected from it, and in fact is high above the creation, above the seven skies. And then they'll quote, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. This is Kalam, the deviant Kalam. And this is the Kalam according to the original meaning. We answer by saying that what they have described is something with edges and limits, a bodily object. Allah is not a body and does not resemble the creation. Because if he's inside of something or outside of it, he would have to have edges. And if he's outside of it, he's connected to it or disconnected from it, so he has edges. If he's not connected to it, he's disconnected from it. If he's far away from it or close to it, he has an edge. So it's a body. Is that clear, brothers and sisters? They say that everything witnessed in existence is either a body, like the people, trees, buildings, water, etc., or a feature of a body, like the motion, stillness, color, smell, etc. It is not valid that Allah would be a feature of a body, because then he would be in need of a body to exist, so he must be a body himself. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Did you understand that, brothers and sisters? Yani, they're saying there's only two types of existing things, bodies and attributes, and it's not valid that Allah would be an attribute because then he would need a body, so he must be a body. A'udhu billah. We tell them that Allah is not similar to what is witnessed in existence. All of what they have described is a creation. They have blatantly likened Allah to the creations. They say that Allah must be higher in place because he is higher in status. We tell them that highness of place does not dictate highness in status. The angels in the sky have a lower rank than the prophets on the earth. And the guards on the roof have a lower rank than a king or president in the basement or bunker. They have other so-called logical arguments. This is the Kalam. But this should be enough to give you an understanding of their twisted reasoning. For sure, they believe that Allah is like the creation. These people fit the description of those who are dispraised in the book of Allah, when Allah said, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُجَادِلُ فِي اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ, which means among the people are those who debate about Allah without knowledge. Any question? Do we need to take a break? No. Kalam here is the name of a practice. Okay? In the old days, most of the argumentation was about the Kalam of Allah. Is the Kalam of Allah eternal, or is it created, or is Allah even attributed with Kalam? Which of course it's confirmed and eternal. Most of the debates were about Kalam, to the extent that all the argumentation was called Kalam. It was given this name, Kalam. So whenever someone would argue, originally would argue for his bad beliefs, and he tried to rationalize that, explain it to you with some fallacy, they called it Kalam. He's coming with Kalam. And they used to just respond to them with the Quran and the Sunnah. Until those people got stronger and having more effect on weak people and ignorant people, and claiming that ahlus-sunnah is using irrational explanations for mutashabih verses and weak hadiths, then the scholars also then responded to them according to their own standard. They wanted a rational argumentation, then they got a rational argumentation with evidence that is backed by the Quran and the Sunnah and doesn't conflict with the Quran and the Sunnah. In fact, is extracted from the Quran and the Sunnah. This was also given the name Kalam. So this is the Kalam of ahlus-sunnah, this way of talking about the belief, defending the belief, and giving the proofs for it. As for the Kalam of the deviant people, it is their argumentation for their fallacious creeds. You understand? The Kalam is this presentation of the creed with mental proofs and textual proofs, this establishment of the Islamic creed, the proper conviction with references and proofs, and the way to argue. This is the Kalam of ahlus-sunnah. As for the deviant people, their Kalam is their argumentation for their fallacious creeds, for their bad beliefs. So when you talk to a Wahhabi and you explain the right belief, that Allah exists without a place because He existed before places existed, and things like this, he'll say, A'udhu billah, this is Kalam. The scholars dispraise the Kalam. So we just wanted to substantiate that the validity of the Kalam of ahlus-sunnah. Our Kalam is valid and fine. What was narrated from the scholars in dispraising the Kalam is about dispraising the Kalam of the deviant people. And according to that, then also the philosophers have Kalam. Philosophers come with their own Kalam. And you can expand it further. And the Christian, he has kalam. He'll try. But it's so weak. You understand? Okay. Ameen wa feek. Okay. Let's take a break then, inshallah.